Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day.
We hope you're having a great Mother's Day and that you're being celebrated in all the ways that you should be.
We hope that your children are leaving you alone.
And maybe their fathers too.
Yeah. One year, one of my kids said, "What do you want for Mother's Day?" And in my mind, I was like, a studio apartment that no one has the address to when they were younger. But anyway, happy Mother's Day.
Yeah.
You know, I do have a good friend. She has 3 kids. And when her kids were little, on Mother's Day, she would plan an intentional outing with each one of them.
On Mother's Day?
Individually, on Mother's Day.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
That's not what Mother's Day is supposed to be.
It was for her. She's a listener too, so she'll know. It was. I tried it
We're
one
gonna have
year
her as a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, she's a pastor down in Texas now. I'm curious now that she's working in full-time ministry, what her Mother's Day activity is. The other thing I used to love when Kim and I worked together in a church in Indy, Mother's Day would come around, and for some reason, the male pastors always thought we would want to be in worship.
What is that about? We let you preach the Mother's Day sermon. Oh, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for making me work.
It's just like getting a vacuum as your gift.
And I always lived on Mother's Day too. Yeah, getting a vacuum. On Mother's Day, all these moms would come in and they'd have corsages. Some of the older mothers had corsages. And all these things, and they'd be like, "Oh, did you get breakfast in bed?" And I'd be like, "No, I had to be at the church at 7 a.m.
Exactly. We've been here since the break of dawn.
So my first Mother's Day, I was all excited, and my kids didn't even stay the night. They went to my parents' house
because you had to go to work.
And then, well, no, my first Mother's Day after working in the church.
Oh yeah.
They weren't even around. Right. And then last Mother's Day, we were on quarantine. I just think when you have little kids and you work on Sunday mornings, it's over. You don't.
Yeah. Even now, though, we have. I've talked with my daughter about doing something on Saturday as opposed to Sunday because everyone's doing their thing on Sunday, and you're just waiting.
Yeah. Well, but happy Mother's Day.
Anyway, we digress. We actually came to share some thoughts about the sermon.
That's right. It was a good sermon about Moses's mothers.
Yeah.
Right. His biological mom and the mother who ended up raising him, the Pharaoh's daughter, which he went from being a Hebrew child who escaped death to a prince.
Yeah, to a prince. Yeah. And don't forget about the midwives before that even got him here, you know.
The midwives who didn't listen to the Pharaoh. Thank God for women who haven't listened to men through their lives.
Yeah. And I think last time we talked about how the Bible is so full of stories that are really interesting and have all kinds of twists and turns. And
this is another series.
Yes, it is. The women have a really prominent place.
Yeah. Well, and as we'll see too, women are constantly taking major risks.
Yep.
Sometimes for a son who they want to get blessed, or sometimes to try and save a son, or to save sons with an S, as the midwives did during that time. I think it's fascinating that Pharaoh calls the midwives in and says, "What's the deal? I hear they're still having kids." And they're like, "It's not our fault. Those Hebrew women are just too tough.
They're made for birthing them babies."
Yeah. So Dave talked about some verbs, which I thought might be kind of fun to go over. But I also was thinking about this idea that Moses had his biological mother who raised him probably till he was 3 or 4 years old, which then meant he had his formative years among his people before he went to the palace to be treated like a prince by another mother. So it made me wonder about the different women in our lives that helped raise us besides our mothers.
Yeah. So for me, you know, I think I've mentioned this before, my mom's an only, but her mother, my grandma, had 2 sisters and they all lived close by. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4 great aunts one grandmother.
Her aunts lived close to. Oh, because she was an only child.
Yeah. So all of her aunts, my great aunts, my grandma, all those women, women in my neighborhood, like my Sunday school teacher that I mentioned.
Oh, yes.
One of the Sundays, like that picked us up in the big car.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really realize like what an influence she had and how much she did adopt us, really.
Yeah.
Until later. But some of my teachers, I would say, had a really significant part in my learning to love learning, love school. There have been the women.
I had a couple really good friends whose moms were like second moms to me for sure. I had a neighbor though, Pixie is her name. She was 2 doors down and she had one son. She didn't have any daughters, and they really kind of adopted me from early on. I would walk down there, and her son Scott would be real funny. He was probably 4 or 5 years older than me. And I think when I would start to annoy him, he would say, "I think I just heard your mom calling for you." But Pixie was really great. We did lots of fun stuff together. And I think, Dave talked about putting people in your kids' lives that can serve as aqueducts for them, that will pour love into their lives. And I think that is really important, because there are times when, as a kid, you're not sure, you feel like you can tell your parents something because ultimately you really don't want to disappoint them if it's something. Or we were talking too, as parents, sometimes you reach a point with your own kid that you're like, I don't think can give you any kind of advice or recommendations on this one without you maybe being mad at me.
I mean, we all have a limited amount of bandwidth. And if I have someone else who I trust with my child, and I know that has all their best interests at hand, why wouldn't you want that? I mean, I always find it interesting when people are sort of stingy with their kids instead of letting people pour into them.
Well, and we heard a speaker years ago, Carey Nieuwhof is his name, and he's a pastor from Canada. And he talked a lot about when your children reach a certain age, to intentionally put people in their lives. And so we did that with Margaret when she was an early teen. We kind of picked 4 or 5 women and said to them, we'd really like for you to have some outings and activities with her at the beginning, just so they get to know. And I told Margaret, these are people that you can call when you don't feel like you can talk to me, and I won't ask them to tell me what they tell you. So, because, we picked people that we thought we could trust with the advice they would give. But there have been a couple of times she's talked to them and I'm like, oh, I'd love to know what she's talking about. But then I have to go back and remind myself, so Nathan's going to be 13 in August, and over the summer we'll be seeking a few different men that he can reach out to in his own life too. So,
I think David says in the sermon, it takes a village, it takes a tribe, it takes all of us to make sure that our children are released well.
Well, and you have an adult daughter now. Do you feel like some of her friends look up to you as sort of a second mom?
It's funny you asked that, because we were in Florida for spring break, and it was my daughter's birthday. Her best friend came as a surprise, and she still calls me Mama Kim. And I was sort of like surprised by that, but I love it. I'm that mom. Kids were at my house a lot.
Margaret has a few friends, and I kind of wonder, as they get older, if they'll see me as someone that they can talk to or not. So, all right. So you want to talk about our verbs?
Protect.
Oh, we have to talk about the Lysol commercial.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was really good. I don't remember it.
I have no idea. Never seen that commercial.
Yeah.
Are you the bear? The elephant?
Oh, let's see.
The bird there was the bear crossing the street, and then there was the little boy waiting in the rain. And if you haven't seen this, just Google Mama Bear Lysol commercial and it'll pop up. But there was a bear, it was some kind of eagle or something covering the rain. the elephant that kept the bullies away, and
The monkey.
the monkey that was picking at the teenage boy hair.
Yeah.
That was pretty embarrassing. And then the last one was the tiger asleep on the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah. My kids would say I'm the monkey picking at them and
You're
probably annoying them.
Yeah. Which one would I be? I probably would be the mama bear.
Oh, you are totally a mama bear.
Because I would only like spring into action if
Yeah.
I needed to do that. Like,
Right.
you better find your umbrella, would be what I'd say.
Well, what I was thinking as the kid is sitting in the rain. I'm like, go find shelter.
Exactly. Like, have I not taught you better?
I mean, there are some things that you can do to protect your kids, and there's some things that's like, I could cover your head, but that wouldn't teach you to get out of the rain.
Exactly. Reminds me of my kids forgetting their swim goggles. And you know, you can do that like 3 times. The 4th time,
Yeah.
your eyes are going to be burning, and I bet you're going to remember.
I know. People think it's, I tell you, I agree. Yeah. So, you know, that made me think when I had both my kids while pastoring at a church, which means everybody's got advice for you while you're having
There's
kids.
lots of mamas in your congregation, right?
But one of the moms, it made me think about this, said she had a daughter who was incredibly independent. I mean, while she was a student, I think like at DePaul, she went over to some Pacific island that doesn't speak English, has its own language to teach English. And I said, what in the world made her think that that was just a normal activity?
Yeah.
And the mom just said to me, well, I let her climb trees.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, climb trees? What are you talking about? And Margaret was probably 18 months at the time. And she said, I can remember sitting at my kitchen window, watching her out back play, climbing trees, and being so worried as she was going higher and higher. And I would say to myself, she's okay. She's, you know, or she said, I would pray for her. She took, you know, God help her get that limb, help her do that. And she said, you know, I wanted to run out and say, come down from the tree. But teaching her that she could do those kind of things, it's hard as
it is.
But
you've done something. I mean, I'm thinking about Margaret and her acting and singing and her ability to just like be up front and be comfortable. You know, she's learned that from you. And we're in this green room, and my daughter, you know, is artistic. She's been a clothing designer, an interior designer of spaces at Zappos, and she said to me, like, you let me paint my room like whenever I wanted to.
It's just paint.
It's just paint.
Yeah.
Just cover it up. There are much bigger things to be concerned about as parents.
Right.
Like the color of paint in the room. So yeah, you have to give your kids space while you're protecting them, you know, so they become all that they were meant to be. Yeah.
But it is hard. Sometimes you want to tell them to get down from the tree and quit acting like a fool.
Do. Sometimes you have to just go not look.
Oh my gosh, right. Yeah.
You know, like
that's
if they're safe enough, then you have to just like shut it down.
Yeah. Well, and I think it helps that I was raised in the 80s when
you also are from a family of brothers.
Yeah, that is true. I have an older and a younger brother. And so I had to prove that I was just as tough as they were, for sure.
I've been at some places where I've seen your competitiveness shine.
Well, I mean, if you could win or if you could lose, why wouldn't you win? That's
great question.
That's just good sense. That's just good sense. Yeah. So let's see here. We were talking about the protecting. Oh yeah, right. Protecting. So it is hard balance to know how much to protect and how much not to. Mm-hmm. You know, I do believe that you learn a lot more through failing.
I do too.
But watching your kids fail is a discipline when you can easily do some course correction.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember a time in your own life?
No, because my mom is like an advocate with a capital A. And so she just is not wired to let her kids fail.
Okay.
Which is probably why I maybe take it too far. But yeah, no, my mom was all that commercial, that Lysol commercial. My mother was the bear, the bird, the elephant. She was all of them. And I grew up in a smaller town where she had grown up. So not only did she know what I was doing, but we had 14 sets of eyes watching who were also all protecting us. Yeah. So I think later in life, I had some pretty big failures on my own that were tough. But growing up, my mom was pretty good about managing our boo-boos pretty quickly. So, yeah. Let's see, adopting. We kind of talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, we did. All those women in our lives who adopted us without us even really realizing it.
Yeah, I think a lot about the women in Haiti who took care of me when Dave and I lived down there. Sister Simone and Sister Carmel. They, at the time, I remember thinking, why can't they just leave us alone? But they were always watching us to make sure we were okay. And now in life still, when I go down there, Sister Carmel's is no longer with us, but Sister Simone will still be checking in and wanting to know. And
making sure you're adopted for sure.
Yeah, in that community for sure. So then he talked about watching over. So how did that work? Moses was as a baby, was put into the basket. And then the mother had the daughter watch over him, right?
Yeah. His sister was watching from the shore to make sure. Mom was there at first, and she had to do one of those, I got to get out of here. I can't watch and see what happens.
Right.
But his sister stayed.
What's hysterical, though, is the sister was totally in on the cahoots.
Totally.
Said, would you like for me to go get a Hebrew woman that could take care? I mean,
Yeah. You wonder if they actually talked about that, or if that just sort of played
I like
itself
to think
out.
The daughter was savvy that way.
Me too. I do too.
It gives her a big part in the story. For sure.
Big sister moment.
And then the mom got paid for watching her son.
Yeah. And that, like Pastor Dave talked about this week, like the rest of the story is like not even played out in that little, like those things had to happen. And then Moses is going to go on to, free an entire people.
Oh, that's right. He talked about that in his sermon. The word draws out, that they use that word draws out, and then he would draw out the Israelites from Egypt. Yeah. So, and then he talked about release.
Yeah, that's, I think that's hard for a lot of moms. I don't know that it was particularly hard for me. When my kid was 18, I was like, you live at Ball State now. She was like,
keep it real.
We went through all these orientation meetings, some for students, some for parents, and then some together. I remember the meeting where we met each other back, and she was like, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm coming home every weekend. And I was like, oh no, sis.
No.
I'm paying for you to live in Muncie, and you're going to live in Muncie.
Yeah. I remember my kids going to kindergarten for the first time, and mom's crying, and I just assumed something was wrong with me, because I was like, oh, finally, like.
I know. Sometimes I was like, oh, how can it be 3:15 already? They're back.
But I wanted to say, Margaret going to high school
was one of those moments.
That was a tough one for me. And I know it's going to be hard when Nathan does. I think right now, I wasn't a really great mom with little ones, like toddlers. Like, they needed to be able to bring something to the table, conversation wise. And as toddlers, I'm like, listen, you need to learn your shapes. Is it my job to do it? I don't know. Maybe. Now, though, I feel like they're older. You can really have conversations. Like, I tell people, I run the house now, sort of like youth group, and so it is hard for me to think about
them leaving.
They're kind of my buddies, except I get to boss them around and tell them what to do.
That's the part you really like.
I like that a lot. They do the dishes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So there are times where I think about that, and the release, that's going to be a tough one for me. But if my mom asks, or if she's listening, it's not going to be hard at all. She's like, you just wait, you'll see. And I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. But I think it's going to be
That reminds me, when you mentioned toddlers, I just want to say something to moms of toddlers. It's hard. It's hard. And you get to like get in the shower and cry if you need to. Jamalyn and I were talking about this at lunch. I can remember when I think I had probably a first grader and a corporate job, and it was a crazy day at work, and I barely made it to the daycare pickup by 6. And the daycare lady wanted to talk to me about my child having taken the barrettes off another child's braids. And I was like, look, lady, how much were the barrettes? Because we can't have this conversation and I'd be able to bring my child back tomorrow. So how much were the barrettes?
I'm going to give you $1.25 and we're going to pretend like this conversation never happened.
So, and my kids talking on the way home and I'm not listening. And we got home and I was like, look, find something to do because I'm going to take a shower and cry. Yeah. The shower is I can remember different times. It's like 2:00 in the afternoon and I'm like, I think I need to take a shower. Because the days are long, but people always will say this, the days are long, but the years are short. Mm-hmm. And it's true. It is so true. Yeah. In the moment, it's hard to realize that. I don't think you can realize it in the moment.
But it is true. It is true.
Another reason to have aqueducts.
Like it is. And while we're talking about being moms to young kids, the other thing I think I understand now that I didn't understand then is that when kids are little, they don't remember stuff. So if you're really struggling because you're not a big party planner now, if you are, absolutely go for it. But if you're not, but you feel social pressure, they're not going to remember birthdays.
Epic birthday parties.
Yeah, they're not. Do it. So that's our
advice.
Our advice there too. So your job is to protect, watch over them, eventually release them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Take some risks along the way.
Release them well, release them knowing that they're ready to go out on their own.
Yeah. As baptized people, we're getting done with this a series of baptism, communion, confirmation. Yeah. Just, give them the good foundation they need. And then when you release them, all you can remind them is that they're baptized.
Yeah. And, I'm glad that most of our listeners have their children in that church is one of the aqueducts that, you feel comfortable having your children at church and having other people influence them. And it's just a great place for kids to get some foundational learning that will follow them their whole lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
And thank you to all the mothers who do the hard work.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.